Hi, I'm Dr. Pat Boulogne, and I help people, especially executives and entrepreneurs, get more out of their day by improving their health, their productivity, their prosperity, and their peace of mind. Catch me on this week's Jesse T Show.
Dr. Pat, welcome to the Jesse T Show.
I love being here. I always love speaking with you.
We have the best conversations, and we were just talking before we jumped on about how younger boys are great at romance with, Valentine's Day right around the corner. It's fitting. We were talking about how they were, your story. Tell us about that story about how the couple of little boys came up to you and were giving you Valentines.
Well, I was in my office and I heard these two little boys who were patients of mine come in the front door, and they're going, Dr. Pat, Dr. Pat. And I stepped out in the hallway. My waiting room was full of women at that time. And they said, Dr. Pat, happy Valentine's Day. They gave me a rose and a sweet little Valentine's card, be my Valentine. They go, happy Valentine's, big hug and kisses. It was just the first Valentine's after I got divorced. So it was so touching. And all these women, they were like going, oh. And I said, can you teach older men how to do that?
And we were just talking about how younger people in general don't have filters, and a lot of times their emotions, they're just a ball of emotion, and especially when they're in that loving, positive might not be the word, but when they're that loving heart space. Like, for instance, I have a 4-year-old. His name's William. William is amazingly gifted with showing his emotions, loving on people, and just bringing people together. He has a gift. He has a gift of never meeting a stranger. He's funny as all hell, makes us all laugh. And his brother's the flip side, where his brother's the analytical, a little bit shy at first, but amazing, just as amazing in a different way. And it's these young people that give us perspective. I've learned that kids are my best teachers. My kids are my teachers.
Mm-hmm. They are. I mean, even, I remember just the looks on their faces also were just, it was very, very endearing. And they were so proud of themselves, because they carried it off and they were well received. And, and they actually turned around to the waiting room full of women because, we're sorry, we didn't know you were going to be here. We would have brought you one too. It was just very sweet.
I know. When I was a kid, I was in a Catholic school in Boston, and I know you've lived up in that area, so you're familiar with that kind of vibe. But I was a hopeless romantic, and I would get smitten or have a crush on a girl, and I would go get flowers. And then we're talking grade school, really young. And I'd bring him to school the next day, hoping to win her over. And she had no clue, and she was definitely embarrassed, and it made for an awkward situation. But I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful, the heart space that kids operate in. And, I was talking about this. I talk about this a lot, but with kids, they just have this beautiful way of just being. And especially when it comes to time. So when you get older and you start putting constructs of time around things, you realize how fast life goes by. Mm-hmm. Especially after high school. I noticed that for me. After high school, I was like, man, life. And now today, present day 2021, life goes by so fast. But as a kid, they're so ingrained in the moment, and they're tunnel vision, and they're hyper focused on just the thing that's in front of them, the emotion that they're feeling, that they don't have a concept of time like we do. And so I was talking with a buddy of mine, another spiritual guru kind of guy. He's someone who's tapped into that world. And I was like, imagine if we could bottle up the fact that what kids perceive as time, so that we could kind of slow our lives down. I think that would be amazing.
I think that's called Einstein's time. Einstein's time is being in your groove. And I think kids are perpetually in that groove. So when I'm coaching someone and someone's telling me that they don't have time, and I said, what I go, are you looking at a clock every 10 minutes? Sometimes they are.
Yeah.
And that's Newtonian time. But if you're doing what you love and you're in your segment and you're in your moment, like kids are, then that's kind of like Einstein time, because Einstein talks about being able to have sometimes parallel universes. And I have always found that interesting as a kid. Like you say that, you don't have any concept of time. Like, well, how long does it take to get there?
Yeah.
And then you always, it's just over there, and it's 10 miles away, something like that. I had a friend's kid that I was watching and hanging out with. And so we went out to get ice cream. And when I was in LA one time at a conference and staying at his house. And so he, his son, he goes, "I'll be your date tonight." And so he goes, "My dad gave me enough money to buy you an ice cream." And I said, wow. I don't know what I'd do without that ice cream. But it was so much fun just to see the perspective, like, the way that he took me to go to the ice cream store was like over the river and through the woods.
Yep.
It was really only a couple blocks away. But my friend said the reason why he does that is so he can experience what his neighborhood looks like.
Unbelievable.
And so that's how he learned to go, the way that his dad, brought him over to have the ice cream as a treat as a kid. And then that's how he got to know his neighborhood also.
It's incredible. And I think that, being able to bottle that up and being able to get to a place where you're childlike, there's so many benefits to that, from an emotion, heart space to a time space. But it's funny because I have a brother that I'm doing life with. He's a former Green Beret. So you would think he's like this badass top, 1% in his industry of what he does. Mm-hmm. And he's come back from that. And now he's an entrepreneur, a consultant. He's someone who's profound in my life. He's big into exploration and spirituality, and he's going to see someone that we call the Time Master. And so this guy is somewhere down in Peru, and I'll be down in Peru in March as well doing my own journey. But he's going to see this Time Master who can, I don't understand it fully yet because I haven't experienced it, but he basically can manipulate time in certain ways to his favor. And he's not someone that like comes out of the woodwork. Like you have to seek this guy out. It's like this weird kind of cool adventure he's going on. So I'm excited to hear what he comes back with, because you're starting to hear these things more and more about quantum mechanics and time. And I've experienced some of these things where I've known in my soul that something's already happened, and I've believed in it so heavily and just knew, not even believed in it, but just knew. And it's happened. Time didn't catch up, but it happened the way it was going to. It's so weird to explain.
Well, it's almost like deja vu, right?
Yeah.
So when you have those deja vu moments, like, I know that I've been here before. There's, the familiarity for, I have a huge fondness for Italy. I don't have a huge fondness for Spain. But for Italy, I have a huge fondness. So I go to Spain a lot, but I used to with my last year. And, but Italy always feels like I'm home. Yep. I always sleep well there. And, I could take, when I first went there, when, maybe 30 years ago, something like that, I walked around Rome without a map. I looked at it. I knew where I wanted to go, and I just headed in that direction. And I ended up there. And it was just very, very familiar to me, like what it visually looked like. So there's that, even, in other places in Italy too, like in Pisa, where, I lived right down the street when I was taking language courses in Pisa from where Galileo was, locked up. And, interesting enough, before I went there for that purpose, we had an alignment of stars in Boston, and you're from Boston, right? So I lived in Harbor Towers, and I lived in the front tower. So the people who lived in the second tower had this really brilliant white light that they would turn on, and it came into my bedroom. And I just said, can we ask these people if they can point it in the other direction? I don't care if it's on. I just don't want to see it when I'm trying to go to sleep. And so one night I'm thinking, gosh, I'm so irritated. Those people are so inconsiderate. They have their light on again. And I opened my shade, and they didn't have their light on again. But what I saw was the same configuration that Galileo saw, that made him realize, that the world was round and not flat. What a paradigm shift that is. And so, in which got him in prison, right? And so at the same time, I was reading the book Galileo's Daughter, who just talked about that one particular thing. And so when I opened my shades and I pulled my telescope out at 2:00 in the morning, and I'm watching it, it woke me up. It was like bright, chipper, alert. And the next morning I got on, and that's when I made my reservations to go to Italy. I have to go see Galileo. I've got to go have that connection. But there's cities in Europe that just feel so familiar to me. Paris, it does the same thing. London, and Rome, I have this affinity for. That whole area. It's like, if anybody wants to take a tour, I can tell you where to go. It makes me feel like, like when you're like touching, like people go to cemeteries sometimes and they touch tombstones, because all energy is created, right? It doesn't get destroyed. It's still there, and everything's frequency. So if the frequency is something that jives with you and that you've experienced before, I think there's the potential to, that deja vu moment really happen.
There's so much there that I want to unpack. And so I'm a firm believer in our souls choosing to be here and choosing to have this experience. And it sounds like, from what you're telling me, part of the deja vu, part of the familiarity with Italy and Paris and all these different places, it could have been another lifetime for you. It could have been, you could have been there with your soul in another iteration, another alternate universe, this universe, whatever it is. You could have been there. That could have been part of, your life at one point. So you never know. But there's just so much, like what you're talking about with the feeling of energy. I felt this a few weeks ago. So I just came back from a men's retreat, and I've been doing a lot of work, a lot of heart-centric work, soul work, just pain body, ego work for the last year. And some of this work has included plant medicines, specifically psilocybin mushrooms, under a set and setting, and with respect and love and intention. It's not just to get high on psychedelics. It's actually to do a lot of work that's changed my life profoundly. And I had just come back from this men's weekend, and we had done psilocybin mushrooms, but we also used San Pedro. So San Pedro is the grandfather cactus. It's the teacher cactus. It's you can ingest it through multiple means, from eating it to drinking it in a tea, but it's a heart opener, and it gives you massive purpose, and it's grounding, and it's very powerful. And the psilocybin, the mushrooms, are more airy and floaty, and almost more feminine, I'd say, and you get a lot of spiritual contact. So one is grounding, one's spiritual. So we kind of had these medicines in us, and we go up to Kennesaw Mountain. This guy that I was telling you about, my soul brother, Lane, the Green Beret. And we go up this mountain, and we're walking up this mountain. And if you, Kennesaw Mountain's a battlefield. So there was a lot of strife. There was death. There was pain. There was suffering. At some point, there was probably victory and joy, and, on the other side. But we're sitting on top of Kennesaw Mountain with the medicine in us. And we just had this heaviness, this sense of just heaviness. And this kind of, the day was gorgeous. It was beautiful. And our conversation was beautiful. But like, I just looked, I was like, man, my heart and my soul is heavy right now. And he goes into this beautiful soliloquy of kind of everything I'm kind of illustrating for you now, in terms of, the pain and the suffering. And you can feel these things. Like when people say, I don't know about haunted houses, haven't experienced one yet, but like, if there's a really good or really bad energy somewhere, you can absolutely feel it. It's like when people say you can cut tension with a knife. The tension between these people was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. Well, what's tension? Tension's a feeling. Tension is a vibration.
It's a frequency.
I 100% believe in this, and I'm starting to learn more and more about this. So it's excited to see what comes. But what's been your experience with the frequency, feeling, and the emotion that comes from it? Because it sounds like you've had some of these, too.
Well, I have, you always have that feeling. I can remember being in Key West, and my girlfriend and I were we went to the Green Parrot, and, hanging out. We're on vacation. I go, let's go in, let's have a beer. It's like late afternoon, and then decide what we want to do for dinner. And all of a sudden, I just looked up, and I looked across the room, and I said, we have to get out of here. And she said, what do you mean? We're just having a good time. I said, no, we have to get out of here. There's going to be a fight. And she said, how do you know that? And I just called the bartender over, like, give me a vague idea how much our bill is, and I threw money down, and I grabbed her by her shoulder. I said, we have to get out of here, and before we got to the door, chairs started flying.
No way.
And so so I just said, and we walked outside, the police were already there. I go, how do they know? I mean, did they follow the person or whatever? They must have. But we just like exit stage right. And I had that experience again, like, when you're really in touch with looking for higher, better answers, you've got to touch into like what you're surrounding, and like, does it feel good? I mean, the other night when I was moving, I had this really interesting experience happen. And it was like 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, in the middle of a 1,500-acre horse farm. And the person who I rented from, they go, "Oh, you're going to have to take that box spring with you." And I really didn't have room for it, And so I'm thinking, okay, we'll just make it work, we'll tie extra rope or whatever, like how we had to put it on because it was on a flatbed at the moment. And all of a sudden, it was like Polar Express, right? All of a sudden, the garbage truck guy.
Love that movie, by the way.
Me too. And all of a sudden, it like comes flying up and slams on the brakes in front of the house.
Wow.
And the man and his son come out. "Do you have any garbage?" And my girlfriend's husband and I looked at each other, and I went, "Box spring?" And I said, "Can you take a box spring?" And he said, "Well," he goes, "I can take it, but it'll be extra money." And I went, "How much?" And I came back and I showed him and he goes, "What size is it?" Fine. It was like, and then they took whatever the garbage was at the house to leave, but they literally, like, I didn't hear them come down. All of a sudden it was like in front of the car, he grabbed the box spring and he waved goodbye to me, just like, like Tom Hanks, like in the Polar Express. And we all looked at each other and went like, wow, that was very serendipitous,
Signs everywhere are signs, right?
And you have to pay attention to stuff like that. I was elated, but I also recognized that, like you couldn't have, planned that at all. I mean, you didn't have to call him up. He just appeared out of nowhere. And so that was very, very cool, and there's other times that you just, I had a woman who was a patient of mine years ago, and she came in and she gave me some crystal to put in my car. And she goes, "Dr. Pat, I get you drive fast." I said, "A little bit." Yeah, as I was being on the Cape, right? And so she gave me a crystal for my car, which I put in there. And another patient gave me some vibhuti from Sai Baba, and so I put those things in my car. And I have passed cops going 80 miles an hour, on the highway. 65, is the speed limit. And I'm doing 85, and it's just like they don't pay attention to me. And so, I always see that, and I think about making my energy very concentric, as opposed to being expansive. And I pay attention to what I'm doing. And so that, and I'm on the lookout, like when I'm driving, I wear amber glasses, so my eye don't have any eye strain, and I'm relaxed and I'm in my groove driving.
Wow.
And I don't, if I listen to books, I exhausted from that, so that experience, my car is my sanctuary for that energy thing, because as soon as you start to get tired, sleep is the main reason why people have car accidents.
I believe it.
And
how about impulse control with sleep? How about when you don't get enough sleep? Let's say you're hungover. Let's say you've done something, you stayed up too late. Impulse control the next day is a real thing.
It is a real thing. And also, on that real thing, it's like, you can have the same symptomatology of somebody who's drunk, with having, and, you would appear to, if you got pulled over, you would appear that you were drunk, but they wouldn't find that you had alcohol in your blood system. They would not just know why. And plus you could be, food deprived, sleep deprived, mentally deprived. There could be a lot of other components in that.
So you have been on a date with destiny in terms of health and wellness, and tell us a little bit about your journey with that. Where was that instilled with you? What were some of the key life lessons that set you on the path to be mindful of that yourself, but then to be a leader and a guide for others? And tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, one of the things is that when I was around 11 years old, I had this idea that, that you could, if you ate something cold when you were and when it was cold outside, then you wouldn't feel the cold. And so, I went out and I tried that. And then when I was, I entered a science project.
Did that work?
Uh-huh. It did.
Hold on. So that's interesting. So you wanted to just, where you heard this somewhere? Where did you hear this?
I just thought it up.
You thought about it. You said, if I eat something cold while I'm outside, because your internal temperature will change a bit if something cold is inside you.
Yeah. So it'd be more similar to the outside.
And you noticed that you were less cold by doing that.
And I noticed I was less cold by doing that.
At 11?
At 11.
That
And then I used to think, when I was skiing, that I would, if I could think thoughts of heat in my extremities, I wouldn't be cold and my hands would be warm. And then that worked also. And so,
wow, the power of the mind.
and I was like, 27. I had no clue at that time. Earlier on, when I was in fourth grade, I entered a project and I called my father up at work. He was working for Allied Chemicals. And when he was there, I called him and said, "Do you have any phenolphthalein?" And he said, "What do you need phenolphthalein for?" And I said, "I'm doing an acid-base indicator, and I have to turn this in for a science project." So he said, "Okay, I'll bring you some home." He goes, "There's none in your chemistry kit?" I said, "No, I don't remember what I used it on, but there's none there." And so, so I did it and I turned it into my teacher, and my teacher turned it into the state. And that's when I really realized I had this more scientific kind of outlook. When you're looking at potholes, like why do potholes go? Why do they get there in the first place? It's because cold and heat makes things be expansive and contract. And if it's hit by the wheel in a way, then it starts chipping away. Yep. And the next thing you know, you got a pothole, and then you have a major alignment, or it blows your tire out.
Notorious up in Boston, by the way.
Yeah,
we talk about Boston. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Especially with the weather up there. The weather is ridiculous.
And it's cold. I was in Michigan. That's where I grew up. So then I had those things, and a friend of mine said to me, because I took all pre-med and I had all science classes in college, and he said, "You should really consider being a chiropractor." And I said, "I don't know, they're quacks." And he goes, "Maybe you might not want to say that. You might need one someday."
Right.
So I was doing an independent study at the University of Michigan Hospital at the same time that we were having this conversation. And I realized that I never saw anybody really get well. The only people who were happy in the hospital were people who just had babies, and that's the only place I really saw people smile, and so, and I had that experience again and again and again, no matter who I was speaking with. And then, I was waiting on tables and I was working on an MBA. And I just started it and I hated it. I hated economics. And so
not the sexiest thing in the world, but it's the world that I live in. It's the one I've chosen.
And so from waiting on tables, and a pretty famous place there, I kind of like overuse syndrome. I, really screwed my shoulder up. So when I got to that point, I went to go see this chiropractor. I said, I might as well go see him. I go, obviously, my friend Cherry said this is going to happen. So I'm now seeing a chiropractor. And my first thought about this guy is, there's no way in God's green earth this guy is ever going to touch me. And anything he can do, I can do better. I go, you don't want to take an x-ray and you don't want to see what the shoulder looks like first before you want to adjust me. I understand that now, but then it didn't make any sense to me. And so I left. My friend came back from school 2 days later. He adjusted me. I had zero pain in my neck and zero pain in my shoulder within 24 hours. And I got on the telephone, I got an application, and I went, and I never looked back. And my father was so irritated with me that I was going to be a chiropractor that he said, that he wasn't going to pay for it. So I said, I don't care. I'm still going.
Good for you.
I'll figure it out.
Good for you.
And that's what I did. When I went to Europe after the first year of being there, someone said, "How can you afford this?" I said, "I don't know. I'm just going. I'm very pulled. I'm very, very pulled to go do this." And so that's when I first started my jaunts through Europe was, right around the same time. I went just before I started school. And then I also went almost every time I had a break, and then my ex-husband, he is French. So we used to go to France a lot. And it just fit in. It's just like, it suits me, and it feels like my favorite pair of gloves, and I'm happy.
It's interesting that there's a large pocket of chiropractors that are tapped in one way or another. There's a lot that are spiritual. There's a lot that are obviously holistic. They believe in a lot of holistic. There's many of the chiropractors that I know, and it's interesting because I guess I'm in that world in my own way, that I know multiple chiropractors that are great human beings that are kind of in this world. And it seems like you were designed to do what you're doing. Like to be 11 years old and to have this innate knowledge and knowing about something, and then to be in a belief system of something, and then to have this profound reaction to when this chiropractor helped you. I mean, it seemed like you were led to this and groomed to this, even if it was just innately like this intuition.
Well, I've always been, when I played, doctor or nurse, like when I was a kid, I never was the sick person. I was always the doctor, and I was never the nurse, and I hated needles. And so,
That's so
and I had to figure out, how to fit that in. But I always, it's just like I would, I used to think that I could train bees, as a kid too. And, but I have this, big love of bees. And, one of the things that I want to do is I want to, create a space to have bee colonies or bee condos. So that, so the bee colonies, because without them, we don't survive.
Right.
And, and also, when you're looking at, the chemistry, what always interests me, I had a really wonderful teacher, and when I was in chiropractic school, who taught us nutrition, and things that he said, like back in 1982 and 1983, never, were like scientifically, based, but he said things. Now, all the things that he ever said that were scientifically based are now proven.
Yeah.
And I used to say, just because something is not proven doesn't mean there's not a foundation for it. And if you look at what the 5 pillars of health are, which, is diet and nutrition, which are 2 different things, but they fall into the same part of that umbrella. Exercise, proper sleep, proper mental attitude, and positive mental attitude go a long way. And then having the structural basis. When I was in chiropractic school, you made a point about chiropractors being, like kind of out there, maybe more woo-woo, in a sense. And it's because we were taught nothing's impossible. And if you have the right pieces of the puzzle put together, you can recreate your health. You can have exponential things happen to you. It's just having the right person who can help you put those pieces of the puzzle together, and finding the right person who you can have that conversation with.
Yes. So
that it's like, okay, so if we work together, you and I, Jesse, and it's just like, we might only go to a certain point, and then it's like, hey, you know what? This is what we've done together. If something goes on in that space together, then come back. But you need to go do X, Y, and Z. Here's where that's not my expertise. I never pretend can do something that I can't do.
Which is great.
Here, yeah, I mean, and then you send somebody on their way, like, so that, because everyone has their path. So if you can enhance their path, give them a park bench to sit down every once in a while, so that they can rest and think about it, and then motivate, and then get past their stuff. It's such a beautiful experience being able to participate with human beings on that level.
It's incredible. And I think there's so much to say in terms of even just your character and how you will, if you get to a finishing point where you feel like you could send somebody on their way, and, or they can be served by somebody else differently or more impactfully in a certain area, your ego doesn't step in and say, well, you're very, you're smart about how you conduct your relationships. And I
did that even on the Cape, when people, because there was, starting to be so many chiropractors on the Cape, somebody said, oh, I want to go try this technique. And I was like, hey, go for it.
Yeah.
Why
and
not? I said, let me know how they do it. I said, I'll go down and get adjusted by them also, because I always like to know like how people do stuff. I want to know, because there's on the Cape, I went to certain chiropractors to get adjusted myself when I had specific issues came up, because that person did that better than the other guy.
I didn't grow up around chiropractic until meeting my ex-wife, and she was into it because of our really close family friend that I was telling you about earlier, the chiropractor down in Orlando. Shout out Lynn Rosemelia. Amazing human being, but just kind of getting into it through relationships. And now one of my best friends, Dr. Amit Ofek, he's here in Atlanta, Georgia. He's a brother. He's an ex-military guy, like a lot of synergy between us. Mm-hmm. But he's helped I'm convinced, because I'm a, knock on wood, I'm a healthy guy and I take care of myself. And I want to get into this conversation in a second with biohacking and all these different things. But, I had allergies ever since I was 18 years old. And I had gotten, I a test years ago that like they walk on your back with different things with like this little thing and like it shows you what you're allergic to. And out of like 50 things, I was allergic to 48 of them, like cats, dogs, trees, grass, like everything. Like everything. And they wanted to put me on this protocol for 5 years where it may or may not work to essentially desensitize me and like, you know, fix it with a pill, so to speak. And I was like, that's not who I am. That's not what I want to do. And again, if it's not going to work, what the hell am I going to do? So long story short, I started learning about things and I started getting information. And Dr. Ofek started doing this cranial work on me where he would take like where my sinuses are and he would move the little small bones of the face and he would do this stuff here. A, it feels amazing, number one, but B, combined with so like, I'm not a big vaccine person personally. I don't go take a flu shot. I just don't do that. Right. And the idea behind a flu shot for those that take them, right, wrong, or indifferent, it introduces you a little bit to the virus, to the disease, so that your body builds up antibodies to be able to fight it off.
They're dead attenuated organisms, by the way.
Say again?
They're dead attenuated organisms.
Hold that thought for 1 second, because that sounds interesting. But really quickly, what I was going to say is I learned from that concept that exposing yourself to something in moderation, that does make sense on a certain level. So I was like, you know what? Let me put myself out into nature. Let me put myself around the things that were causing me discomfort and allergies, along with the work that Dr. Ofek did. And then where this work came from that I'm talking about is running. So I started running a couple of years ago after my father passed. And it was this beautiful connection I had with him because he was an athlete. He loved to run. I felt that I was with him when he ran, he was with me when I ran. But what I was doing was I was putting myself into the environment that was causing me these issues. And I think that combined with the chiropractic cranial sinus work and the overexposure to the things that were messing me up, I literally almost don't have allergies anymore. When I went 12 months out of the year, blowing my nose, taking Zyrtec, taking Claritin, like it's almost gone now.
Well, also, all allergies, I've never met anybody who has allergies who doesn't have gut problems. So,
right.
And so in my book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired, which is a questionnaire that gives people a snapshot of where their health is right now, it will show you where your weak link is.
Yes.
And so when you know where the weak link is, then you can start to go like, okay, it's like, I want to fly to Atlanta and I want to meet you for dinner. So I want a flight from, Boston that's going to get me there at 8:00 at night or 7:00 at night. So we can go have dinner on the way coming back up into like wherever you're at. And so it's just like, that's what I do with my questionnaire. And then when I talk to somebody about it, I look at, what's lurking below the surface that we don't know, because we can all feel like, you can feel great one day and the next day you could be throwing up in the toilet and you're thinking like, what did I eat? Did I have food poisoning? But allergies specifically, there's a chemistry that's going on in your gut so that when you're reacting to it, especially in Chinese medicine, and because I have a degree in acupuncture, I look at like, okay, so does it make you hot? Is it cold? Is it from the exterior? Is it from the interior? If it's from the exterior and it's only staying up here, then it hasn't gone into being able to manifest inside the body. So if that's the case, then it's only here. It doesn't mean that's because it's in your throat doesn't mean that you have it. It just means it's an exterior condition. And so, but allergies, I've never met anybody who doesn't have, or immune system issues. I've never met anybody in those two categories that don't have some type of gut problems. People who have diabetes, heart disease, obesity, they have gut problems. I mean, I've never not seen that, in like 30, I don't remember how many years I've been dealing with health, but 38 years. That's a long time to have that, keep on having and seeing that same pattern. So, and the idea of my book when I wrote it, which I didn't realize then, was that I wanted to help people have that, like the light bulb go on and be able to advocate for themselves, as opposed to someone who's like in the medical office telling them what to do. It's just like, okay, let's see what you got. It's just like, well, I don't feel good. Well, where don't you feel good? Oh, I feel it sometimes here in my stomach. That doesn't, that's so general, and if you can pare it down to like, what's going on and why does that, there's 11 organ systems. So if you can compare where that glitch is at and like, oh, you know what, you have muscle problems too, or that you have like, gut issues, like, oh, you've got urological issues, it's just like you have inflammation in your body somewhere and you've got to get rid of it or else it keeps on producing and going, and it will go to your weakest link first, and then it will go to the next weakest link. And so by the time it actually manifests as a name and a disease, it's probably been festering for quite a while. So, hence the title, why, are you sick, fat, and tired? Because the sick part takes a while to come, and if you're fat or not, basically, and if you're tired or not. I mean, it's not rocket science, but it's a very simplistic book. And what I like about it, besides that work guidebook, is that it helps people have something in their hand to walk to their doctor's office with. And because not what typical Western medicine doctors don't order the same blood work that somebody who's a lifestyle medicine doctor or a functional medicine doctor, so it's important to pick the person who can read that chart for you and then order the appropriate blood work that you need to have done and not waste your time, your money, or your energy and your good health. I mean, it doesn't, all that stuff that is, I'm very passionate about that. And I wanted to help people have that experience of something stronger than medicine. And so that's what this does.
It's incredible how we're in alignment in just different places, where you come from a more professional academic place and I come from like a guinea pig research kind of place. And
you want to be my guinea pig?
Yes, for sure. I love you. I think you're amazing. So of course, I believe I'm in great hands. So I started this journey years ago through this kind of cliche fun term called biohacking, which is just using tools, protocols, modalities to enhance the richness of your life, whether it be physical, mentally, emotionally, spirituality. A lot of it's centered around physical though, when you think about biohacking. And I started diving deep and I started getting into different thought leaders. And there's, these guys like Dave Asprey, Paul Chek, Ben Greenfield, that are really big into this space. And I know that you'll nerd out on this with me. And that's why I want to talk about it is, for me, I started learning about how disease starts, and it comes from inflammation and how your gut is like a second brain, and all disease pretty much starts in the gut, dis-ease. And the food is medicine concept, where if you can learn about food and you can eat the right foods here's the thing. Not everybody's not suited the same way. Everybody's completely different. So what's healthy for you may not be healthy for me. I know someone that broccoli hurts them. Organic bell peppers, which I used to grow in my backyard, are bad for me. Chickpeas are bad for me. Things that you would consider that are healthy. And it's because of my gut biome. And so there's this company that I went to a couple of years ago called Viome, Viome. And Viome has this insanely immersed, data-rich report they give back to you. You send them off a stool sample. 2 weeks later, they come back to you and say, these few things. Number one, these are your superfoods. Eat all of this. Number two, these are your okay foods. You can have them here and there. Number three, these are your kryptonite foods. Pretty much avoid these at all costs. My kryptonite foods back then, which is a couple of years ago, and I have to redo it again to see where I recalibrate, were scallops, peppers, chickpeas.
All peppers?
Organic bell peppers,
okay.
Nightshades, all this different stuff. So
okay.
Yeah. So I didn't know that. And if you're trying to eat healthy, and someone's aversion is broccoli and they're like, eat more greens. Well, it doesn't work for everyone. And so it also told me about the good probiotics I had in my body and the ones that weren't so good for me, and like how to calibrate all this and eat more of this and do more of this. And if you literally can control, and this is a hard part, even for me, it's hard sometimes because I grew up Italian. I love meats, cheeses, pastas, which are all pretty not great for you. And I love sweets. Like I love the richness of food. Like I love the community that comes with it. And I think I mentioned this on the podcast I was on before you, but my grandmother on my dad's side, little old Italian lady, she taught me how to cook. So like, I love the idea and the culture and the custom of food. But I also know in my head as a free thinker and someone who seeks out this information, food can kill you if you don't know what you're doing. And if you don't seek out people like yourself or other biohackers, people that can help you. So all this to say, talk about gut health, talk about food as medicine, talk about inflammation, disease. Like, let's go deep on that because I think it's super important for people to understand how to heal themselves. They have the ability to be their own doctor before they need another doctor.
That's true. You said it all. Yeah. No, but there's the problem is that, no one in America has ever really been taught to cook, and or choose foods. And so I know of a woman who for 10 years, she had bleeding from the bowel, and they finally said to her, we're going to have to give you a bag and cut out intestinal tract
Ugh.
because we don't know what else to do. And so it's just like if you have a fire, you're going to call a fire department, and your fire department's going to come and put your house out. They're going to use axes and hoses. Axes are surgery, hoses are medications, and they're going to water everything down. And they're going to say, look what a great job I did. I destroyed the inside of your house, but you got to save a couple things, right? And you get to start all over again. And then the carpenter, me, the think out of the box kind of girl doctor, it's just like comes in and says like, wow, this is a mess. You've got to like do first things first. You got to find out where the problem's at. You've got to find out what organ system is, faulty, and you've got to like work at fixing it all. You've got to tonify it. You've got to, push things. Are you candidate for detox? Maybe, but if your gut's not in good shape, no, you can't do that. And so when you're looking at those components, like, and people don't understand it. So the woman, 10 years later, they said that to her. She said, forget you, I'm gone. Screw you, I'm out of here. Went and found somebody who understood, did because these were from her colonoscopy, had her do it's very similar to what Biome tells you.
Yes.
And then said, you can't eat avocados because avocados are so healthy for her. She had 2 or 3 or 4 a week. So when she didn't eat them, she didn't bleed. When she ate them, she bled.
Wow.
And so when she stopped eating them a year later, she went back to that doctor and had a colonoscopy, and her colon was perfectly normal. So, food is so influential to how you express your health. I mean, there's people, and nightshades are pretty insidious because you think they're only the basic 4 are eggplant, tomatoes, potatoes, and peppers, right?
The main Italian food groups.
I know. I know. But they spread out. There's a lot more of them, so like, you got to take a look at what can I substitute for that, because lectins in those foods are their autoimmune, like that's the defense, so when they go in, they attach to that one cell layer in the gut and they punch a hole through it. Ugh. And then the tight junctions split apart.
Leaky gut.
And then you start having leaky gut. And so all those things from leaky gut go in, but you got to, like I always say, fix the gut, change your life. But you got to find out what part of the gut that's the issue. And you've got to find out what kind of let's take these things out of your system, and not use them for a while. Let's do some medical foods so we can get your gut to heal as fast as possible. And then we're going to start looking at reintroducing, doing something like Biome, where it says like where it's definitive, where like, do not eat these foods.
Yes.
It's not a choice.
Yes.
And it's not that hard. It's just like, okay, so what can I use instead of like eggplant? Well,
can I ask you a question? Because it's for a guy that has, I would say, above average discipline, work ethic, motivation, execution. Sometimes I just eat trash food, like a pizza or ice cream and a lot of it goes back to our impulse control. Like a lot of it's sometimes centered around if I, I don't drink too much anymore, but if I like last night, had some drinks because Super Bowl and like, enjoy whatever.
Rah.
Yeah. Impulse control. So how does someone stop eating the crap or at least,
well,
and this is, I work out 5-6 days a week. Like I understand health and wellness and like, but there's still times where I don't want to say give in. I think I'm like like the Pareto principle. I'm like 80-20, like 80% healthy, 20% like enjoy the bad shit. So what would you suggest as a doctor? Not that this is advice for a specific person, but just generalities on how to change their eating habits. When that seems like, for me, as someone who's motivated, disciplined, that seems like the hardest thing for me to do. I can go run a marathon, but like, oh, there's ice cream in the fridge. Let me go have a scoop.
Well, just don't buy the ice cream, for starters.
That's what I've found, actually, for me personally, is just don't put it in the house.
You just got to get it out of the house.
100%.
For starters. And like, and if you're going to have ice cream, go someplace where you're only going to have ice cream for the moment. And and my rule is if you're going to sin well, don't like buy garbage, and it's just like, but don't do it very often. And so like, how you get that stuff out of your, like, you can't just buy it. It's just like, and you have to ask yourself, am I supporting my health or am I detracting from it if I buy this?
Pretty easy question.
It's just like, am I willing to do what it takes to be healthy? How has my health been in the last 2 years? Am I happy with it? If you're not, you better change it now. You better take a really hard look at it now, because when you have a crisis, it's like, I used to tell people, great, I need you to come in for maintenance adjustments. I have a practice. And I made a deal with people. I said, if I don't need to adjust you, I don't charge you. Go out and do your day. I'll see you next month.
Beautiful.
And that was like my thing to get them to do their maintenance. That's how I kind of was my marketing for that.
Smart.
But what I found was it's just like people still tried to challenge me on that. And I just like tell them, I go, great. I said, here's the scoop. You come and see me 12 months a year. You're on maintenance, right? When you have something go on, you're seeing me 3 times a week for at least until we start taking the edge off. Then we drop down to twice a week. And if you really want to fix it, so you're back to seeing me like 7, maybe like 10 times for one thing. I said, whereas if you did it on a regular basis, it's more cost effective.
Yep.
I mean, for the cost effective part. And then you have a trained eye on you for like minimal amount of money. I mean, come on, how hard is this? And it's like, it's not rocket science, but people, they don't know how to eat. They don't know how to buy food. They don't know how to get rid of things in their house. I mean, I can remember going to someone's house going, Dr. Pat, this was just a kind of a VIP thing. We went through their kitchen. We put all the food was out. It was down on the counter. That was my rule. I didn't want to have to, I go, don't hide anything or else you're like wasting your money.
Yep.
And so we went in and I said, did you read the label on this? I said, because I already know you threw food out, right? And they went, I don't think I did. My husband might have, kind of thing. And so I would look at it. I said, this goes, I look at the label and I said, can you pronounce, give the container to somebody, can you pronounce the first 5 words on here?
Yep.
And if you can't pronounce it, it goes in the trash. And so it's like, well, wait a minute, let me try that one again. That's my favorite salsa. I just let and if you look at like those sweet, like those breakfast things that have fruit in them.
Yes.
If you ever look at the label of those, they don't have, it's just like, there's no food in them.
It's garbage.
It's all fructose and it's corn. I was like, I don't eat corn unless I know it's organic. It doesn't go in my mouth. I don't use it
So bad
at all.
for you.
And you also have to take a look at your stools, by the way, because that reminds me, I had people.
Let's talk about it.
Like, take a look at your stools. If you've got food in your stools, you're not digesting that food. You're wasting your money and you've got a gut issue. So if you can go back and go like, where's my gut issue? How can I fix it? I know a woman, when I went to go write my book, I went down to Charlottesville, Virginia. They have an incredible farmer's market. I love farmer's markets. And I met this woman and she makes her own bread. She mills her own bread. She grows it. And so she said she was diagnosed as celiac and she loved bread so much, that she decided that she was going to try to grow it and then ground it. And so she made it and she tried it and she had no more gut pain and her gut healed. Food is medicine. You've got to know how to put foods together. So I always give people food combining charts that make sense to them, because when you put food and you pair them together, you digest them better. Yep. So even if you're going to eat something that is like, if you're going to do it well, then what you do is you have like, okay, so like last night after watching the game, I haven't had one in a long time. I made a martini. So I made a martini and I had a protein and I had carbohydrate.
Yep.
And I thought about what it was that I wanted to do, and I had my fat, protein, and carbohydrate. And, I had olives. I had some wonderful, Trader Joe's has some really great olives that are Italian green, that are like, not too salty, and so it's just like, it was a great treat and I really enjoyed it. So when, and also people will have a tendency to have like these hangovers from eating food.
Yes.
So if food's not combined correctly, hence the food combining chart, even with herbs, because herbs are, all medicines were made from herbal formulas before. And then they made them more compact, so you didn't have to have so much of it. So in Chinese herbs, people make cheese and they drink the qi.
Yes.
And there's so many things that you can do with food to enhance someone's life and to promote them for being healthy. I mean, the list goes on. It's just like, but people need to know how to like cook. They need to know how to put things together. And having a pizza isn't a bad idea. You just have to know what the ratio of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates are, and then balance them out. A lot of time where it's lacking is in the protein portion of it. So you can put shrimp on a pizza. You can do add-ons. on that, but you've got to read the label.
It's what you do with the information, right? And it's how committed you are to yourself and showing up for yourself. And if you know that you're not eating well, or you're not sleeping well, or training, or just doing all these things that help you live better longer, your buddy and my buddy, Dr. Joe Esposito here in Atlanta, something that left with me. He wants to burn the candle. Like when you have a candle and you light it, it's super bright. And the way it burns all the way down is the same light all the way until the end. So he wants to be like a candle for his life. He wants to burn bright the entire time he's here.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to use food as medicine, use these combination charts, which, by the way, I'd love to see that and share that with as many people as I can. And being mindful. And I guess another part to this is maybe not beating yourself up if you do have a bite of that cheesecake, or if you but reward yourself when you need to, but you don't need to do it every day.
Well, the problem is you can't only have one bite of cheesecake. I mean, my brother's diabetic, and when I went down to see him at Thanksgiving or Christmas, and we went to someone's house that I knew. And this woman offered him cheesecake, and he just looked at me, and I just went not my body, not my blood sugar,
Ooh.
And so he just said, and he took, because I'll just have one bite. Well, he ate the whole piece. And she didn't cut him a piece, tiny piece. She cut him a
brick.
And so I just said to, and then the next day he was really irritated.
Yep.
I mean, people don't realize that the foods that they eat affect them mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and socially. So that, if you have a bad knee or a bad back and go, oh, it's the weather, it probably was more than likely something that you ate as opposed to the weather.
Inflammation.
And it's just so those foods, if they're creating inflammation, I use a company called, Exela, and it's IXELA, where I send people test kits, and it's an interesting blood workup, because they really look at what we do with that is we design food, we look at what target nutrients are not there, supply those target nutrients in a 3-month program, and then repeat the blood work again. So that you can say what's changed in 90 days, because you can make big changes. Your gut can heal quite a lot.
Of course.
Days.
Yes.
It's one of the easiest organs to do that. And by the way, I went to school with Joe Esposito.
You said what?
I went to school with Joe Esposito.
You built it?
No. I went to school with Joe Esposito.
I remember you telling me that. That's why I brought him up.
Yeah. And so it's just I'm familiar with the story about the candle, and I totally agree with it. I mean, who wants to, get to be 60 years old and have grandchildren, and then, watch their grandchildren, I have to go to their game and then can't pick them up.
I want to chase my kid. I'm a freak when it comes to physical activity. And I'm 6'1", 215. So I'm not a small guy, but I get out there and I smoke people half my size in these obstacle course runs. Mm-hmm. I just did one back in October, had 30 obstacles, 6 point something miles. It was a 10K. And out of 1,000 people, I came in 20th. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that I want to do that when I'm 80. Even if I'm not moving that fast, if I'm not going that fast, I want to chase my kids around. I want to be there for them. I want to show up for them. I want to burn that candle bright, because another part to this conversation about living longer is, are you familiar with blue zones?
Yes, I am. Very much so.
Oh my goodness. So for people that don't know, blue zones, it's basically there's pockets of the earth where people live longer, healthier, more vibrantly. And, there's things with genetics, there's things with environment, there's things with food, there's things with all sorts of things. But really what they've kind of found out is it's the community. It's the people that are around them that keep them living vibrantly longer. So people that are singing together, playing together, doing arts together.
Well, in those communities, they eat very clean.
Yeah. The nutrition matters.
And they eat well. So, and the blue zone, they're trying to make Naples in Florida a blue zone community.
Okay.
And it's a little too transient, I think,
it is.
to do that. But, but the idea behind Blue Zone is to be your best always. It's to be that candle the whole time. The Joe Esposito candle.
I love that. I love that. We share that common connection.
Yeah. And so, but, some of the things in the Blue Zone, they do a lot of plant-based things. in their diet that they share with people. And
like pescatarian too. A lot of there's like like Okinawa, there's fish and there's different
it's
stuff.
like it's a Mediterranean diet. And it's just like the other thing that people focus on is like when they go, oh, 5 servings of fruit and vegetables, they would rather have 5 servings of fruit. And I tell people for the first time in a month that you go to do something, have the 5 servings of vegetables instead of the 5 servings of fruit, and only have fruit as a treat.
Yes, because it's sugar.
It's not, because as soon as you eat sugar, it increases your inflammation and it cuts your digestion. So if you're having dessert right after a big meal and you have that sweet along with your meal, it cuts your digestion. And
that's my problem. My problem is I want to always have a sweet with a meal. And I need personally, and I think a lot of people listening to this, some ideas, whether it's, hiring you, whether it's, getting into the book, whatever it is, how to deal with sugar and how to either detox, cut back, cut cravings. Outside, I just don't buy it because that sounds great until you're tired and you're like, oh, I'm on the road. I'm going to stop at this place and get like a friggin' donut, like whatever it is. Right.
Well, in my program.
Right. Talk about it.
No, in my program, I help people through a specific sequencing of food. At the end of the sequencing of food, from anywhere from 10 to 30 days, can sit at a table with a bread basket and not touch it.
I love bread.
I know you're Italian.
I love bread. I know the best breads. Like,
but the thing is, if you don't take that cycle and you don't break that cycle, and it's a very specific set of food that you eat in order to get to that point. And if I physically can see them, I can do it a lot faster.
Sure.
But the idea is to like eat specific foods so it maintains your blood sugar values over a period of time, so you don't crave that sweet.
We're talking like slow release carbs kind of thing.
Well, it's a combination of it's a specific program that I do with specific medical food to support it. And so when you do that, like you get the gut in order first, and then you help your liver function better so that when it kicks out toxins that you want to get out of your system, it throws them out of your body as opposed to recycling again. Because when toxins keep on getting recycled in your body, here's the big like, oh my God, I don't want that to be me moment. What happens is when it recycles, they go back to the liver. When the liver gets overwhelmed, then the liver stores those toxins in blood, brain, bone, and fat. And if it does that, that's deep blood. And even in Chinese medicine, blood's deep, and so you've got to be able to get like heavy metals and all those things out of there. And that's one of the reasons why you have to be suspicious of some vaccines, is because of the heavy metals that exist in them. But, you've got to be able to pull that out, and you have to give the gut an opportunity to heal.
Yes.
And you can't do it backwards. You can't go do a detox or to tonify your liver and then fix your gut. It doesn't work that way, because because the liver is because its job at, doing so many things like, balancing the hormones and things like that. It's just like when it kicks them out, it's got to have some place to go. And if it doesn't have a place to go, they just get recycled. And if it keeps on getting recycled, then you start having a fatty liver. You start having other liver type of issues. You have hormonal issues. You can't manage cortisol. You start having a stomach. You're getting overweight, and you have diabetes, and you have heart disease. They all relate to one another.
Yes.
And it can be, it's a lifestyle induced, mechanism that people have gotten used to, of eating fast foods. Do I ever have fast food? Maybe once a year. But
wow.
It's just like, I just look at like, what do I want in my house? It's just like, I stock up on having vegetables, and I stock up on having protein with the vegetables, because I'm always using very good olive oil. And you never cook with olive oil unless you're going to cook on low heat. Coconut oil, you can cook on higher heat,
smoke point. Yeah, you need a higher smoke point, like ghee or different kind. Yeah.
Yeah. You need something that is, like better for you as far as that hack goes. But I help people put all those pieces of the puzzle together. I make sense of that for someone so they can, so that it's faster, it's better, it's simpler. Simpler doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but it's very doable. And then you get unstuck, and then you have your tangible results. things change. And so it's like, and also the big component of that too is being focused on your mind, you know, in your mindset, you know, and having that positive mental attitude, you know, because that everyone can be a bully to themselves, but that's not pretty, you know. And so having that talk, you know, talk the talk, walk the walk,
Self-talk.
you know, it's just like, you got to like, what can I do with this? Like, hey, if you ever start getting sick, you know, make miso soup. Never. And I have a specific recipe that I tell people for that. You know, it's just like when you start feeling achy, you know, and, you know, here's a health hack. You know, David Asprey talks about charcoal. You know, I use charcoal. I put it in it's now part of my supplementation since last March. And because what I want to do is I want to pick up anything that is a toxic element in foods that I eat, you know, so I want that to move through my system faster.
How are you implementing? Because I was getting my next question in this conversation seemed a beautiful segue with your saying charcoal. I was going to talk about supplements and different vitamins, minerals, and different ways to implement those. But how are you getting charcoal into your system? What's the mode or function of actually putting that in your body?
I buy organic coconut hulled, you know, the husk charcoal, and you can buy it. I buy Peak Performance is the company that I use. I don't use David Asprey's company. But you know what, and also, you know, you've got to, I ordered just because I was someplace else, I forgot them. And I went into a health food store and I opened them up in the health food store and they smelled like mold.
Oh, no.
So if you smell you should like sniff your vitamins that you take. And you should also take every vitamin in a separate glass and put a little bit of white cider vinegar in it. And if they don't melt and dissolve within 20 minutes, you know, then you should don't take them because you're not digesting them.
Wow.
You know, and it's important that happens. So that's one top that hack that you can do with that. But the charcoal, when I was in a meeting for putting on an online event that didn't happen because of COVID. Last year I was in Chicago and this girl just came back from doing live events in Chicago. She lived in Chicago, so she did them in Chicago, and then went out to Colorado, California, went for a little break with her boyfriend, her honey, and then came back. And when I saw her, she was on 8 planes in about 5 days. And so, and then we had this meeting and she goes, Pat, I'm really sorry. I got this really bad cold. I get it every time I'm on a plane too much, you know? And I said, every time? I said, you need to do something before you get on the plane to ward that off. And so so she said, we had these meetings anyway. And, you know, I just put her on the couch, you know, I adjusted her, and kept her warm, kept her fluid, kept on giving her miso soup, you know. And on the third day, I started having that really achy feeling across your shoulders, the back of my calves. And I went, I'm out of here. And I thought, oh, I have all my stuff with me. The only thing I had was charcoal. And so I started taking the charcoal every 2 hours for a 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And I titrated in. A lot of people say they never think about doing it that way, but I wanted to if I had something in my system that wasn't supposed to be there, I wanted it gone. In the morning, I had a long drive. And so that's what I did. Took a hot shower, went to sleep. I woke up, I felt like a million.
What are you doing with the charcoal? How do you eat it?
Just taking it. They come in capsule.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. What are your thoughts?
With water.
Yeah.
You know, and if your body needs water, water will taste great. It's
water's my favorite drink. I mean, outside of when I have a cocktail, usually on a Friday or Saturday night, all I drink is water. You see this gallon jug. I mean, that's how I roll because I know how important it is in so many ways.
It's important to be hydrated for having better sleep, for losing weight, you know, for having clearer cognition, you know, for bathing your internal organs and keeping them hydrated is so important.
Yes.
You know, and so that's good.
There's a beautiful book called Own the Day by Aubrey Marcus. And this guy, you should plug into him. He's this amazing entrepreneur, spiritually awakened, conscious dude who has a company. You said Peak Performance. He had a company that he was a founder of called Onnit, Onnit, down in Austin, Texas. And this company does all sorts of double blind studies and really does a lot of work around, he has nootropics. He has, he uses different mushroom blends, not the psychedelic kind, although he does a lot of psychedelics. but I bring him up because with Own the Day in the book, the first thing he does when he wakes up is he has 12 to 16 ounces of like just room temperature water with pink Himalayan sea salt so that you can get your minerals. And you can
Mm-hmm.
And then you do a little squirt of lemon for flavor, but also it's a super hydrator. So having that kind of drink versus just water makes a huge difference. And so I think there's all these implements that you can put into your day and into your life. And part of what I started doing about a year ago is I started tapping more into nature for its healing properties. And so getting 15 to 20 minutes at least of sun every day and direct exposure on my face at certain times a day. Grounding with bare feet.
You have to have it on your fleshy skin.
Yep. Get it on your fleshy skin, get it on your eyes, get it on your face, like be in the sun, and the vitamin D boost that'll give you. And that'll help. It's almost acts like a hormone. It's incredible. And then the grounding. I don't know if you've done this before. I've explored some of the things behind grounding, but standing on the earth with your bare feet and how much interplay that has with health there. And so do you have any implements or tools or kind of arrows in your quiver that you work with your clients on when it comes to like more of the kind of the spiritual woo-woo or like the natural forms of healing?
I usually, when I'm with somebody on one-to-one, I usually work on doing cranial sacral.
Okay. Yeah.
And when I'm doing acupuncture, one of the first things that I do is I always clear out the emotional stuff first, and actually broach that subject. When I've been coaching, approximately around the fourth or fifth time that I talk to somebody, there's always kind of like this edginess, with somebody. It's historical. And so I've always just like, let's not talk about food. It's so boring anyway. I mean, there's like, it's very cut and dry. It's like, tell me what's really going on, and then inevitably something's like, happen, with in their relationship, in their life, their work, there's something that needs to be addressed. And so we talk about that. And a lot of times after that session, that one or the next one is when they have this like, oh, you know what? I don't have pain in my wrist anymore. Or my back feels a lot better now. I didn't do anything. What do you think it is? And then that tie into being more conscious about food and raising that conscious level for that is it's really big, and then having like moving forward from that moment. And it's easier projectile. A recent client of mine said to me, I said to her, so what's the takeaway that you've gotten from working with me? Because I was just going to invite her to work with me again. And so she said, oh, I'm not quitting, at all. I just want to let you know you're stuck with me for like another time. And she goes, I just want to thank you because it's the first time in my life I've ever felt this free in myself again. 17 years, and it's just like, it's like changing your mindset, changing your food and healing your gut. It's powerful. It's just really, really powerful.
You can really do so much and live well for yourself and show up for others. And people just need to listen to their intuition. They need to seek out mentors and people like yourself, people that are trained professionals that can help them through these seasons of life, and just ask. I was really excited to have Mark Victor Hansen and his wife Crystal on the podcast not too long ago. And Mark's very renowned for many things, but one of his biggest accomplishments is Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Right.
And I bring him up because he just came on the podcast recently and he talked about the new book they did together called Ask, A-S-K exclamation point. And it ties in spirituality, it ties in business, it ties in life and relationships and the power of just asking. And so for those people that are out there listening or watching this, and you're called to talk to Dr. Pat or reach out or whatever it is, just ask, just reach out, just say, how do I get started? What do I do? Like, just do it. As cliche as that sounds, that's how, change happens. So if you could just ask and check in with yourself, ask what it is that you're looking for and what you need, and then reverse engineer that and find out, someone who can get you to where you want to be.
Right. Well, and even if it's not me, I can always steer people. I'm very good. I love problems. I wake up in the morning thinking it's so great to solve problems. I don't actually say that to myself, but that's how my day usually goes. And I'm not tired. I don't get exhausted from that. And, so I know that that's my bigger mission. So even if it's not even about your health, I still have that I have people call me for all sorts of things that I just like, okay, so let's take on your health also, because in order to, if you want to be here, like down the street, and you can't walk it, what purpose does that serve? You've got to be able to put the pieces of the puzzle together. So I do more than just like, talk to somebody. I'm not just a doctor of health, I'm a doctor of life. And I've got a lot of common sense thought processes that, do this first before you do that. So it's a lot easier. And there's never, truly, there's never a stupid question. And my mentor used to say, maybe you can help me out with this quote. He used to say, there are no strangers. They are just friends that you haven't met yet.
100%. And for me, I'll take that a step further. In doing my spiritual work and having some amazing experiences, I've learned that we all are a part of each other. And you're a reflection of me. I'm a reflection of you. There's this, there's a bit of God in all of us. We're not gods, but we have divinity in all of us. And my divine is your divine. Like there's just interplay, like we're connected. And when I look into you, there's this exercise that we did. It was so beautiful a couple of years ago at this retreat that I was on. It's called See and Be Seen. We're standing together and we're looking at each other in the eyes. And eventually you start to see yourself in someone else. And you start to realize that we're all the same. We're tied to one overall consciousness, but we are experiencing it in different shapes and forms from different people. And so if people can really understand that, I think it ties back to what that mentor said to you, that we're friends. We just haven't met yet. We're the same people. We just haven't connected yet.
Well, Geronimo, there's a story about Geronimo and this Union officer that was sent to go talk to him about trying to get the Indians to give up the land and stuff. And so he kept on saying no. And he finally said yes to this one person. And he went and said, they sat in front. And the guy was told, do not talk to him until he talks to you. And they just sat for hours just looking in each other's eyes, and I was so touched by that story that I had a boyfriend at the time. I said, let's do this. And the first thing, your first inclination to do is to laugh, right? Because you're like trying that. And then, but if you focus on the purpose at hand, is to look into the eyes, you start seeing things because your energies are meshing, that nobody else would. It's like you don't have to have a conversation, And so at the very end, when Geronimo, this guy walked out of there crying because he saw the sorrow in the Indians, And I don't remember the rest of the story after that, because I was just like, but. Obviously Geronimo ended up giving up the land and, or they ended up taking it, Custer's Last Stand and the Alamo and all those things like that. But they, that human, there's nothing is so powerful than the human connection. And when people realizes that, we are all one. In the book, The God Code, they specifically talk about how we have the DNA that's so that we're all interrelated, we're all connected.
I 100% believe it.
If we get to that mindset shift in that, then you treat people very differently. That's like that scapegoating stops, that like
judgment, fear, all that.
Well, that, and it's just like you move forward. It does not help to wallow in the past. It helps to be present and it helps to go forward. Acknowledge the past, but learn from it. There's nothing you can do about the past. There's something you can do about the present. So even when bad things happen, I always say, I think to myself, someone told me this was a gift that I had, that I think, doesn't everybody do this? And I think, okay, so that happened. What did I learn? And how can I take that and do something better with it? That being resourceful and being persistent, and then moving forward, because that's helpful, and some people, they're so connected to that, like turn the TV off and stop watching it permanently, unless you're watching something that you really love to watch, like football, or if it's like I'm a football fan, I actually I'm like, oh, I know all those people, and but it's just like that. There's nothing, it's just like when you come from your soul, and you put yourself out there, it's not always easy. But it's simpler than being, like trying to do something that doesn't fit you. It's like wearing the wrong size clothes and you're always uncomfortable, so that being, everyone is a friend, it's just like no one's a stranger. Everybody's a friend that you just haven't met yet. And so when someone calls me, it's just like, it's just to get acquainted. It's like, I'm not trying to I don't want your firstbborn child, or any of that. I just want to have I want to know who you are. I want to know what makes you tick and
Yep.
what can I do for you? I mean, how can I have, because sometimes it's just having the conversation, and so there's, that, and I like to see people when they get it and that light bulb goes on, that dimmer switch goes up. It's really a special moment. It's a big win-win.
Beautifully said. And it's so true. And I think we're getting more and more into really understanding this connectedness and this consciousness awakening that we're experiencing as a world. And there's this kind of term that I've heard, and I don't know if I'll butcher it, but basically, and it's not to, it says men, but I think it means men and women, but it's basically like hard times create good men and good times create soft men kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing that now, and this means men and women, right? And so
Right.
The pandemic, regardless of how it happened, who created it, wherever your head is on that, we all have our own beliefs. It's something that we're dealing with as a culture, as a society, as a world. And we did go on a 10 to 12 year run of, after 08, after the housing crisis, after the recession. Mm-hmm. We went on a 12-year run, even speaking from my point of view, from in the market and investment manager point of view, that hat, we were overdue for a correction because these corrections come every 10 to 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this correction came in the form of a pandemic. And as much pain as we're feeling right now, and as much some people isolation, or you're seeing mental health stuff play out in the world right now, it's almost a necessary form of uncomfortability. Not to downplay it as just uncomfortability, but you only grow when you're uncomfortable. And if you seek out discomfort, whether it's pushing yourself that last half a mile when you're running, whether it's, getting advice that's not an echo chamber from someone who loves you and says, hey, listen, you're fucking up here. You're not doing something here. You're not showing up well here. Yeah, that might be painful in the moment, but it'll force you to do two things: retreat, go inward and say, oh, screw the world, which is not the way to go. Or embrace it, receive it with love and say, yeah, that sucks, but I'm going to change my MO XYZ. And so I think that's what's happening with the world right now. And it's pushing us towards more unity, more consciousness awakening, and the resurgence of these plant medicines and people that are, consciously awakened with how they run their business and how they treat people. I mean, we're being pushed a certain way, and we're heading towards an interesting time where there's going to be a little bit of a fight. If you believe in the Great Reset and, capitalism and all these issues that are coming down the pipeline, but you have these light warriors, these people of light that are coming to fruition, that are leading the way. And I think that it takes something like this to help us evolve, which my company 46 and 2 Wealth Partners talks about this specifically, DNA evolving, all these things. I think we're being pushed towards that evolution.
Well, something that you mentioned, you mentioned mental health, and there is, two things, is, a lot of chronic conditions, relate back to mental health. And it all starts with your gut. So, and mental health issues come from the gut: anxiety, panic attacks, schizophrenia. But although you have the genetics part of it, it's how your DNA is responding to your environment. It's not what you have, it's how you're responding to your environment and how your body and genes are expressing itself. And I found a company that I started using their. I never recommend products. I'm not a multi-level marketing type person at all, unless the product actually works.
Okay.
So I recently started using a product, because I had 2 colonoscopies. The second one destroyed my gut, and so I've been trying to get those microbiomes back to where I need them to be. Because when that happened, people, when their gut has issues, you start gaining weight, and my mother passed away at the same time. And so you're kind of like, I can't put my finger on the right thing here. So mental health issues are not my issue, but But when I'm looking around, I'm seeing people, I said, people don't have gut health. They're not eating well. And this company that I use that, if somebody's interested to find out about that, is like really a great reset to fix your gut so that your gut, it's like gut, brain, and body.
Talk about it. You can talk about it. What's the name of the company?
The company is called Amari.
Okay.
And so in Amari, it was just like, what I liked about it, my friend, I love this woman. She's referred people to me. I love her. Her name is Amory Tolman. And she said, hey, Pat, I need a title and I need you to talk for 4 weeks and teach a class. And I said, what kind of class am I teaching? She said, well, it's a weight loss class. And I said, so tell me what the weight loss is supposed to look like. And I said, what products? I've always like stayed away from like products. So she said, well, it gets rid of belly fat. And I said, all right, I'm in.
Like, sold.
What is it? I mean, and so what I discovered is that if I was going to tell someone, you want to have a base product, you want to have a good base supplemental product, it's Amari. And so we called the class, Biohack Your Belly. And so, like, that's my title. That belongs, that's I love
it. I love it.
So I taught these women this. I said, the thing is, it's like you guys are taking Amari. I mean, whatever supplements you're taking and you think they're working or not working. I can tell you that I've been taking it. I'm not tired. And I had a major, situation happen last week at an Airbnb that I was in, that a woman had a major mental health meltdown. And it's just like, and I said, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm not dealing with this. And then I moved here, which is where I'm at, happy. It's like very copacetic. But what I realized is that I started taking that in the beginning of January, this basic supplementation to refix the gut, because I had that biome issue. And that was my one goal, to do that. And the thing is that and I already take supplementation. So this is like not, it's like the interesting thing for me is that the results I saw in a very short period of time, just were very soothing, very forward, and keep moving forward. And people, what I said to them is, if you hit a roadblock and you're doing something and you're not making the progress that you think that you're making, then you need to look deeper. Yep. You need to dive deeper. You need to look deeper, because there might be some other glitch that's in your bank of health that needs fixing, So it was a great course. People lost weight, and, it's like they have like, very, I like the product, and I recommend the product. Like, if you need base nutrition, this is how to do it. And then if you have specific things go on above and beyond that, then we need to have another conversation and go and look deeper. And as to like what's really going on, it's just like, what does that mean? It's like reading in between the lines. My ex-husband used to say to me, like, he would say something to me and I would say, so that means X, Y, and Z. He goes, how do you know that? I was like, I'm reading in between the lines. I'm a very good in between the line reader. When you're looking at mental health, that's a really good way to get to that point, is you've got to fix your food, and you have to fix your relationship with food, and you've got to take good supplementation to support that. If you do that first, and that doesn't cost a lot of money, for people who are financially conscious in that regard, then you have to go deeper, and you've got to go like, what kind of blood work do I need? But you first got to refill the bank. Because you've been taking deposits out of it for years, and so if you can fix that, and make the bank even, then you can sit there and be like, okay, so what do I have to do to dive deeper? What's my next step? And then that's where you can look forward into doing that.
People have to reframe the idea of loving themselves and investing in themselves. And if you're spending money on your health to live brighter, longer, then go for it. Like you may be scarcity mindset, you may be being practical about having extra money, like whatever it is. But if you're healing yourself, if you're living longer, healthier, like you have to change your mindset around that, because you only get one life. And if you're going to have a life, you might as well live it as well as you can for as long as you can. And one of the ways to do that is investing in yourself with your health and your mindset and all these different things.
Mm-hmm. And you can't be productive. If you want to go to work and you really want to prosper, you know, you better be healthy. People used to ask me all the time when I had my practices, I had a big practice on Cape Cod, and they said, Dr. Pat, how do you do it? I see your car here at 7 o'clock in the morning. I said, I'm not seeing patients at 7. I'm having breakfast, but I'm not telling you which restaurant I'm in. People would come up to me. And so, you know, you've got like, how do you do it? You know? And I said, I eat really clean. You know, I take 3-hour lunches. People go, why do you need a 3-hour lunch? I said, because after I finish working, I want to eat something and I want to lay down and take a 30-minute nap, you know, and then I get up and then I'm revitalized for the afternoon, you know, and I really watch, like, you know, like I don't watch TV. I listen to music. If I want to listen to something, if I want to find out about the news, I turn on my computer. It's all over the place, you know, pick your phone up. You know, and I'm very conscious about how all those pieces of the puzzle fit together. But you can't be productive and you can't be prosperous and you can't have peace of mind if you're not healthy, because those thoughts ruminate, you know, and thoughts can undo anything that you do to get rid of toxins in your life, you know, and get rid of any of the traumas that you've had, like by going to the chiropractor. It undoes them, you know, so you've got to get a handle on thoughts and you've got to get a handle on your immediateness of what exactly it is that you need to be able to move forward, you know, and in a way that you're kind to yourself and that you can go from point A to point C in the quickest amount of time and have the best tools and information possible to do that. So if somebody'd like to explore that, I'm more than happy to have a chat with them.
And we will definitely make sure that in the show notes, all the contact information for everything that you have for people to find out more about what you do, how you do it. You are a magician, you're a wizard, you are someone who can someone who can leave people better than you found them through just being connected with you. So we'll make sure that all the ways to plug into you are apparent for people to find that. But we're definitely just starting our journey and our conversation. And you know, for my show, I've had people on multiple times that we have so much synergy and different things to touch on that, you know, I look forward to our next conversation on the podcast.
Sure.
Thankful for you. You are an amazing human being. Let me be the first one of the listeners and viewers to just be grateful for you and send you all sorts of love and positive energy for 2021. You are the amazing, the mighty, the powerful Dr. Pat. I'm Jesse T. And be sure to catch us on next week's episode of The Jesse T Show.